We begin here. President Cyril Ramaphosa has officially handed over the mortal remains of some of the heroes and heroines to the families at a homecoming ceremony at Freedom Park in Pretoria.
Now he says these freedom fighters fought for the liberation of this country.
They include former ANC Secretary General Duma Nokwe and former PAC leader Edwin Makoti.
The president has also committed to government to ensuring the repatriation of other South Africans who died in exile to provide their families with closure.
We must build memorials, yes, memorials to the sacrifice, to the resilience and solidarity that characterized this profound friendship between our countries. We must also undertake memorial activities that showcase the innovation of our people across all disciplines, across shared industries as well. While we remember these heroes and heroines through monuments and acts of memory, ultimately the greatest tribute that we can pay to them is to build a South Africa in which all people are free and equal. And we must honor their memories by working with greater determination to lift the people of South Africa out of poverty and create employment and opportunity. That will be the best memorial that we can build for the people who sacrifice so much, who are lying before us. We must work to end all forms of violence, particularly violence against women and children. And we must build safe homes and safe communities. We must tear down the divisions between black and white, between men and women, and between rich and poor. The return of these freedom fighters reminds us of the caliber of activists that led us on the path of democracy. It reminds us that whenever we are or wherever we are and whatever we do, we are called upon to be the agents of change. We are called upon to be activists. In our actions, in our conduct, we must follow the examples of these men and women who lie here.
All right, let's now take a look at some of the names of those whose remains have been repatriated and, of course, brought back home. The President Cyril Ramaphosa handing those remains a little earlier on to the families. Venon Mudley is among those, and Todd Machikiza are some of the names of those whose remains have been handed over to their families. Stanley Buti Molefe is also among those who, of course, have had, their remains handed over. Dumanoko, of course, you would have heard as the ANC has been talking about him. Florence Moposho, as the Women's League there, has also been talking about the fact that she is one of those who, they've been really looking forward to having their remains back home. Boise Bucibo, Hector Skombozo Nkula, these are some of the people who, of course, their remains have been handed over. There's Johannes Sebata Tautau, as well as Mabetlas Bokhosing, Lindile Maneli there, and of course, as you know, we're going to be talking about the significance of this moment, really just one also an important moment for the families, and John Maruo, as well as Bafana Duma, MK Lifa, as well as, of course, Advocate Sipho Mantula is going to be in conversation with us as we then look at the significance of this. Let's follow Edwin Makoti there, as mentioned earlier on. There's also Matota Mioli, Basil February. These, of course, some of the names is Tembiso Stanford Matigizela, Jatson Kuzwayo, Balungile Shembe, John Nyatide Pukela, and Ngangula Mzondi Kajwa. And these, of course, are some of the names there of the 42 remains that were handed over to the families earlier on at Freedom Park. And let's look at this further now. We are in conversation with Mkhulu Ntsingiza, Great Empire of Kemet co-founder, as well as Advocate Sipho Mantula, a researcher from Mbeki, from the Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. And I do understand that Mkhulu Ntsingiza will be in conversation information with us shortly, but on the line currently we do have Advocate Sipho Mantula, who is joining us. Good afternoon to you, Advocate, and thank you so much for your time. Let's just start first by talking about this significant moment in our country's history, given the fact that, of course, this is not the first time that we are seeing a repatriation of the remains of struggle heroes, but certainly an important milestone 30 years on.
I think significantly we can look both politically, culturally, and also on international solidarity level, that when there's this spirit and these bones that were brought back, they were in exile, were fighting for this kind of men and women. There was even a child there who was age 12. I think it's from the Mudisi. Men and who were coming from townships, from Soweto, KZN, Western Cape. And for me, that it shows that even diversity of struggles that our people through in the early 60s, in the 70s, in the late 80s. But the issue that the president raised is of saying we need to memorialize, we need to have the memorial egg. I think Freedom Park was a better place that was built for the past 8 years. It's how it has been utilized. Hence the names were even inscribed today. But the issue of reparation, we can talk of repatriation, constitution, of bones and the spirit, but the repair, who have committed that.
Advocate Mantula, pardon me, I'm going to come in there. I'll ask that we try and get you on a better line as we continue then this conversation, because as you are mentioning now, it's quite an important, subject that you're touching on, because as much as the president earlier on, expressing government's gratitude to the people of, as well as the governments of Zambia and Zimbabwe for what he describes as they having taken great care of South Africa's compatriots and for enabling their remains to be repatriated. There, of course, are some significant historical ties when it comes to, some of, between these three countries. But at the same time, as Advocate Mantula is saying, this is not only a political significant moment, but it is a moment for the families as well, because they would have been looking for their loved ones to be repatriated. And you speak to those who are part of this process, and they do say that they are looking at over 1,000 of such individuals who need to be brought back into the country, not only for their family's sake, but also for them to be known and their names to be, for them to also be memorialized when it comes to the history of South Africa. So certainly quite a big development here. But we also saw a little earlier on the families, performing some of the rituals there, and hoping that Mkhulu Ntsingiza will be able to join us as we talk about the significance of this connection now, as some have described it, to say that when their loved ones' remains are back home now, it's going to be quite important for them, even for the identification of knowing where exactly they are buried. So we'll continue to talk about this